media. Joining us today, we have Jenny Erlingson. Give us a wave, Jenny. And Heather Fallis. And Jenny is going to introduce a little bit about herself, Heather, as well. So I'm not even going to go there with you. But then Sarah Silliman is our program director here at Velvet Ashes. Sarah, can you just give us a little bit of instructions on how we're going to operate with this today?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all for hopping on with us. So if you are joining via Zoom live, you have the opportunity to ask questions and chat with us in the chat box. You should see that on your screen. And in that, you can choose to send your question or your comment either to all of us. It'll show as all panelists, or all panelists and attendees. If you want to just share a thought for everyone who's on to see, you have the option to choose one of those. So just keep that in mind. And as we go, feel free to add a question or a thought. I'll be hanging out in the comments with you. And if you are watching live on Facebook, you can also be commenting there, and we will check those questions and just hop in and ask and chat about those along the way.
Fantastic. We are so excited. And if you have a question, go ahead and pop it in there. And if we don't get to it right away, we are hoping to grab some time at the end to go back through and address all of those questions. So as we share coffee together this morning, let's just do some introductions. Yes, where's your cup from? Do you have a special cup? Oh, but
no, this is from America, Target special.
Classic. I'm sporting some Netherlands action this morning.
Nice.
Jenny, it's afternoon for you. So what do you?
Yeah, I'll have my cup right before my younger two get home from Lake Scully, which is preschool. I'm gonna go ahead and have that. So I'm on standby.
On standby.
I'll need it then.
Sarah, what are you representing
I have Edinburgh, Scotland.
Oh, a treasure. I love that place. All right, Jenny, let's do introductions. So we are so grateful to have some amazing women from our community with us today for this conversation. So Jenny, tell us a little bit about yourself, your work, your family, and in one word, your relationship with social media.
One word, but okay, first, I'm Jenny, and I'm joining you from Iceland. I'm originally from Alabama in the United States, and I have 4 kids, 4 amazing, beautiful, feisty children, and I'm married to an Icelander, actually. My husband's Icelandic, but he was in the States for about 16, 17 years where we both did ministry. So here, I feel like what we do is still unfolding all the time, but the main core of it really is supporting local churches and believers, doing a weekly radio program and kind of getting in the community and seeing how can we serve, how can we lift arms. Our passion is that how can we continue to stir the fire in ourselves and people around us that can really experience and encounter Jesus and know who they are in him. That kind of comes out with the things that we do, including a kids camp coming up next week that we're getting to help with. And then on the side, I guess you could call it that, is I get to help other writers get their books out. I write myself, still publishing, and helping other people get that out, which has been a beautiful blessing on the other side of the yes to the Lord, to move to Iceland. So to see that happen has been really cool. For social media, I had 2 words. I'm gonna keep it to the one, and I guess we'll talk about it more later, but I would say distracting. Mm-hmm. But my 2 words was beautiful distraction, but if I had to choose, I think the distracting, definitely outweighs the beautiful part for me right now.
Yeah, well, hold on to those words. We're going to dig into those in a little bit. But Heather, so grateful for us. Heather and Jenny both write for us at Velvet Ashes, and Heather was actually has a really beautiful liturgy that was up this week that was meaningful to a lot of people. So Heather, just tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, and what you're doing right now.
Okay, so currently I'm in America. We just got back a little over a week ago for our 10 months of home assignment. So coming to you from Texas, and I'm in my dad's office, so you can see his mountain lion over here. So I feel like I'm in Africa or something, but actually just in Texas. But typically we live in Southeast Asia. We serve in a sensitive country there in Southeast Asia. And our ministry platform is teaching English to students. So we get to hang out with middle school and high school students, teach English, build relationships with them and their families. And we also partner with the local fellowship there. We just really love young people. We served as youth and children's pastors in the States for 12 years before we moved overseas. So kids and youth are definitely our heart. And we just love how the Lord has been able to take us to a really unexpected place in Southeast Asia. And we get to do what we've always loved doing, but do it in a really different context that has just really helped us understand so much more about who God is and how much he loves the world. So yeah, that's typically where we are. I've got 3 kids and we homeschool them. So that keeps me pretty busy as well. But yeah, we're excited for this season in the States, kind of trying to get over jet lag and readjust to America. I would say as far as social media, the first word that popped into my head is complicated. And I think that kind of sums up how I feel about it.
Well, and I just want to give a name to, actually, you have started putting on social media. It's something that has blessed a lot of people, Liturgies for a Life Abroad. Did I get that right?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
Yes. And Jenny, you've put out books, Milk and Honey Women, and yes, you have that Milk and Honey Publishing. And so I just want to put names to the women that are actually behind those things, if you see them, because you have blessed so many women in the community by what you're offering out there. So as you are listening today, I just want you to know that these ladies have a real relationship with you as the community, but then also with how do you use social media for good and the complicating part of that. So I just would like to maybe even ask you, I know that when we were overseas, I found this need to want to share the life of my family, but also protect locals. And then the complicated, when we do take a vacation, without being able to sit across from people and explain, we aren't using all of the ministry money that you're sending to go and take time away, and so it's just like this really complicated thing. And so I just would love for you to just maybe share with us, how do you separate out and use it, as a ministry tool for you, for your ministry? Do you use it in that way? Heather, why don't you start with us?
Okay. Yeah, so there's definitely a pretty steep learning curve. I feel like if you've been engaged in social media before going to the field. So, before that, it was pretty much just kind of me saying whatever I wanted to about our family and, documenting pictures and trips and things like that. And I never had to think too much about what I was posting. But then you're so right. I felt like once we moved overseas, it became this thing that, our family and friends in the States wanted to know what we were doing and what our life was like. So I felt this obligation to be posting so that they were not like, you fell off the face of the earth, where did you go? So there was that component of it. And then also kind of this accountability of, okay, well, now that, we are funded by so many of the people that are watching our social media, how much do I share and what's appropriate, what's going to cause them to ask questions or question our stewardship. So that definitely came into play. And then I know initially when we first moved overseas, I don't think that I really thought too much about like pictures that I posted about of the local people and the people that we ministered to. And as time went on, I started to think, if some person like came and took a picture of my kids or my family and just posted it all over social media without my consent, like how would I feel about that? I don't know that I would feel good. And so I started kind of having to weigh out, what is appropriate, what is ethical, what is right in terms of what I'm sharing about our ministry and the people that we're serving. And so I think for me, it has been a process that I've had to give myself grace on, because it's kind of one of those things that you do what you know to do. And as we know more and we learn more, we try to do better. And so I'm always trying to ask questions before I post. Is this helpful? Is it glorifying the Lord, or is it glorifying me? Is it putting me in a position where I look like I'm a good person and I'm doing all of these good things, but it's kind of diminishing the value or the quality of the people that I'm ministering to. And then, you know, as you mentioned, I've got this Liturgies for a Life Abroad post or account that I created. And that kind of stemmed from this community that I was not expecting at all when we moved overseas, but that just kind of was birthed through different connections that I made on social media with other global workers, that as I kind of wrote things just personally about myself, my own experience, people would say, yes, I totally understand that, or I get that, or you put words to things that I felt, but I didn't know how to say. And so I have blogged personally about my own thoughts and my own journey for quite a few years. And then I started writing with Taking Root, which is kind of another blog for expat women. And so, yeah, just through kind of those experiences and developing this community that was really unexpected, that has become a huge blessing. I thought, you know, there is a space for this to be used as a tool, not just for me to share my own thoughts as kind of a journal or, you know, a way to process externally, but as a way to encourage other people that are walking this journey with me. So yeah, it's been really interesting. There have been a lot of unexpected things that I've had to learn along the way, but I'm thankful that God's grace helps us figure these things out when there's not usually like training or a handbook for when you move overseas. Like your whole social media experience is going to change and transform.
Oh my goodness, you're so right. I think maybe that needs to be included in something, right? The handbook of social media, how not to fall into a hole. But okay, Jenny, so share a little bit about your experience and thoughts as you interact with social media and your ministry and your family.
Well, I mean, definitely that'd be a very valuable resource to include that for training for social media. And it's like, I'm thinking about it. It's so funny because, like you said, beforehand, we didn't really have to think about this. And I'm really big on, trying to pinpoint fear of man in me. So that has been an issue. And I think that's why it has been distracting for me. That's been an issue where, okay, if I post this thing, am I having to post it for, you know, I'm trying to build something because I'm publishing books, right? Or I really legitimately have a passion to encourage, or I need to keep people up to date. You know, you have all these streams now with our social media. And it's so funny because 75% of what I have on my phone are things I've taken, like, oh, this would be great to document, and I never post it. Whether it's either legitimate, like this is probably not good to post, or just even fear, or just like, okay, how will people take this? Because I'm totally like, this is totally innocent, this is totally okay, but how will people take it? Like, just being honest, our car that we drive is a Mercedes van. Now, in the States, it's like, whoa, this is what you're driving. In Europe, I mean, the semis are Mercedes, you know what I'm saying? Like, that was one of the cheapest vehicles that we found that was able to transport all of our family. Like, and it was a great price. Like, I mean, it would be equivalent to something. But when you see a snippet, a snapshot of something, that is so hard for people to process, especially coming from maybe a different context or culture. And so, like, there's times where I'm like showing a video of our scene and just driving, and I'm trying to cut out the Mercedes sign there, because if you don't have a relationship with me and the context, and then those giving money, you don't have the ability to explain to the layers of people who are watching your social media, all this stuff, your accountability and how you're turning in your receipts and all that. So there's so many dynamics. But then, yes, you're trying to, again, keep up. What do you say? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's hard when it's a one-sided conversation that you're having on social media, and some of those things need to be two-sided. And so it's so hard to choose. How can you communicate things well in a one-sided conversation? Absolutely.
It's so difficult. And people have their perception of what it is that you do, especially in ministry, regardless of how that ministry like looks like, okay, they have this expectation, and it really is, you have to have cultural context. You have to it's hard to see a bigger picture. And then you're trying to update. And so a lot of my main updates are through email. And so I know there are times where people are like, okay, Jenny, you're in Iceland, like, where are all the posts? But there's a level where, I'm trying to weigh it all, which is why I have a social media Instagram for like our family, Fire and Ice family, kind of focus more on Iceland. I have mine. I have Milk and Honey Women, which is Encourage Women. And then I have now Milk and Honey Books, that I'm doing that. And there's 4. And it is actually getting kind of tiring because it's like I'm trying to post here and I'm posting majority on my personal one. But it's like, well, maybe that should be here, and just trying to wade through all of that because I don't want to overwhelm people. I don't want people to be tired of maybe seeing my family, but then I want to be able to show Iceland. And then, so yeah, it's just still trying to, like you said, Heather, just that learning curve. You're really still learning and processing and trying to walk through all of that. And I think that is why it's also beneficial. And there's some beautiful stuff in the community and connection that has formed through social media, especially for us, when you live overseas, from your people, from your family people, you're making new people. But these connections, just like this Velvet Ashes and other connections, I mean, I have been amazed at the beautiful connections that have happened through social media and through these platforms and these other collaborations. So it's been amazing. But just that, I think the weight of how do I do this well, that can be so distracting. And then where there's times where you just want to drop off the face of social media and just like not even engage. So yeah, it definitely has been a process of learning as we transition, and settle into a country. You're transitioning with how you interact with the rest of the world. How do you take in news and take in things, and how do you respond when it's just, there's just a lot of different dynamics to that.
So if you're watching this and you have a specific struggle that you're wrestling with social media, like, I don't know, do I need to have a separate family and ministry account? What things do I share, not share? Please feel free to add that, and we can pick these ladies' brains as they have really wrestled through with the Lord, how to best communicate, and probably are still, I imagine we're going to, as social media changes and there's stories and new platforms, we're going to continue to wrestle with the best way to do this, but please feel free to add your questions in there. But Heather, Jenny brought up a point of saying, what, I've separated out. I have a family thing and I have a ministry thing. Where have you landed with that and how you share on social media?
Yeah, so like I said before, coming overseas, it was pretty much just all about our family and our life. And I think as we moved overseas, it became a lot more of a connection piece of not wanting to just talk about, here's what I ate for lunch today, because people don't necessarily always care about that, even though it might be really beautiful. But, how do I communicate about what our life looks like and more of the important pieces of what's going on. And so I transitioned some in my personal like Instagram account and Facebook to just kind of filtering through like, what story do I want to tell? I think that I started looking at it not just as, let me just put anything and everything that I think on a whim out there, but what kind of story do I want to tell with my life? And, I think years from now in the future, like this is how we're documenting our stories, right? Like this has kind of become the new, I remember growing up in my era of growing up, for my mom, like scrapbooking was a big thing then, right? Like you had all the people selling all the scrapbooking stuff and they'd have scrapbooking parties and they'd make these elaborate photo albums. That's never been a thing for me. But one of these days, my kids, grandkids, whatever, they're going to have this virtual kind of photo album documenting our life. And I want to make sure that, not that I'm only showing the shiny parts of it, but that I'm really telling a story that's true and that is meaningful. And so that has kind of, for me, become something that as I'm posting on my personal accounts on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, that whether it's about our family or about our ministry or just my thoughts for that day, that it's in line with the kind of story that I'm wanting to tell about our life. And that I'm not posting things that, how there's the, not time hop, but the memories now that'll show up. And sometimes I get those and I'm like, why did I post that? Yes, like you just look back and think, well, that was dumb. Nobody needed that on their feed. And so that has helped too, to kind of look back at what did I post in the past that now I kind of look at and think, well, that was silly. That doesn't add anything to the value of somebody's Facebook feed or Instagram feed. But what can I share that's going to add value, that's going to tell my story, but that is also going to be something worth somebody's time reading. I don't want to just steal important moments of somebody's day talking about what I had for lunch. But if there's a story to be told there, you know, if I'm talking about a meal that I had with a neighbor where we live in Southeast Asia and describing the flavors of the food and things like that, there's a story there. It's not just, you know, this snapshot of a plate of food and saying this was delicious. And then we also, you know, with this Liturgies for a Life Abroad, that has kind of branched off, because I know that not everybody that follows my Instagram feed is an expat, but I wanted to feel the freedom to kind of cultivate words and craft words that were more streamlined for a specific purpose. And so as I kind of thought through that and wrestled through it, I just thought, you know, it's going to be better for me to have a completely separate thing that is just going to be for this specific audience. And that has really, one, it's given me, I kind of started it because I wanted accountability. I wanted to have this thing that was going to push me to continue writing, to continue putting things out there. Because with my personal thing, you know, there's nobody telling me post 3 times a week. It's kind of whatever, which is good. And that's refreshing. But this is some accountability for those of us, you know, that are creative, that want to write, that want to push ourselves in a creative way. To have a separate account that's not mixed in with my family has given me a little bit more motivation to write to a specific audience that has helped me maybe in times that I kind of was like, I'm just not feeling it. You know, I don't want to do this this week. It just gives me that accountability. So, and then we also have a secret Facebook page that we use to communicate more specifically with supporters. And that's something that I don't really have a certain amount. I try to post about once a week. But that's also been a way to share stuff for us that's more sensitive that we can't just put openly on social media. So those are kind of the 3 ways that I have found to share that are a little bit separate. But I haven't found it so far to be overwhelming or stressful. It's still, I like to feel like I'm the boss of this. It's not the boss of me. So I feel like as long as I'm the boss of these things, we have an okay relationship. Once it starts to feel like it's the boss of me, then that's when I just want to check out.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we dive into another aspect of this, Sarah, as a single woman who also lived in Asia, how was social media a blessing or a hindrance for you, or did you feel more of a need to post because your, you know, family and everyone wanting to make sure that you were actually doing okay because they wanted to see it in your eyes, you know? So tell us a little bit about how you interacted with that as a single on the field.
Yeah, I probably, like you all, you know, had lots of different feelings about social media. I appreciated the way to stay connected, particularly because I lived in some pretty, you know, more isolated areas. So then the temptation was to let social media be my connection, you know, connecting with other women in Velvet Ashes, which is lovely. These people that get me, you know, I can share with my family or share with other people and get that kind of feel good response when I get a bunch of likes on a post or something, and then get so tied to that I was not then reaching out to people around me, connecting with, you know, people right in my area. So I definitely felt the pull both ways, I think. And I struggled with this idea of like, I need to impress people. So let's show the, you know, the really cool, unique things about my life and have conversations. And, you know, yeah, like you guys have shared, just the blessing and the struggle of social media.
Such a great point that I actually was wanting to get into next was, you know, Jenny, your word was beautiful distraction, I believe. Is that what it was? And just that, how do you balance that, not letting it pull you too much back to your passport culture and letting the things that you see affect your longings, your desires, your attitude about, wow, I don't get to do that. I don't get to have a girls' night and go to the movies and,
Mhm.
like all of those things. How do you balance that and help yourself understand when, hey, actually, this is shifting into an unhealthy area for me?
Yeah.
Jenny, how do you deal with that?
Well, I mean, first of all, I love this conversation because I think there's that we're airing a lot of those things that you just struggle with. I mean, you already have the distance and the law, just everything, but it's on display so much more because you are seeing, and that was like the first part year for sure was the struggle of I'm missing this thing, I'm missing baby showers, I'm missing things that I've prayed for and labored for with friends. Now they're celebrating it or walking that thing out and you miss that thing. I mean, so you have those different aspects that take place that you see, and then you know that you're distant. So I don't even know if it's like balance because sometimes all the plates are toppling as you're trying to hold it. But I think it's always that perspective of remembering. And so for me, it's always I talk about this a lot. Getting back to that Christ-centered place, Lord, this is the season and the moment that I'm in, and this is what you called me to, and like Lord, like meet me here, like pour into me here, whatever it is I'm needing, even the craving for that, like God, would you pour that into me because it is tangible and it is real, that longing for that and of missing out, missing significant things that if we were there, with our loved ones, we would be a part of, but realizing that, Lord, you have me here for a reason, for the season. So would you please pour into me whatever it is that I'm lacking, that I would lean on that to really to comfort me? Or would you please like remove any kind of bitterness or whether it's resentment or whatever else is stirring up, like letting that be. Maybe my husband talks about this a lot about information. Oh, this is good information. So if I'm really like in a state of like whatever, then it's informing me that I need to maybe shut something down, that maybe I have not sat down still enough to let him pour into me. I've been realizing that lately that I haven't, I need to get out more and just walk and all that. So it's just letting it be really good information for me. Can I genuinely celebrate with my friends, but even if I'm struggling, am I letting myself get back to my source and get centered again? So it is such a beautiful thing because we can see it though, because before, years, decades past, things would happen, you have no clue what's going on in the lives of your friends and family. So it is so beautiful to be able to even join virtually certain things and still to connect and not feel so maybe behind or forgotten. But in the same way, it is like you're in this glass box. So you just like, if I can just put my hand through that TV, maybe I can taste it and smell it and touch it, but you can't, So it is, you're so close, but yet still so far. So I think you have to have that rhythm of just shutting it off, getting back. Okay, Lord, just again, pour into me, whatever it is that I need, that whatever longing, whatever's happening, God, I know the solution is in you. I believe that. So Lord God, would you settle me in you? And as I process through this, help me to know what to do with all these things. And so it definitely is a struggle for sure. But I know that I love you said, Heather, like that grace and patience for ourselves in those moments, and to remember then too, the tangible people that you have around you. Like you said, Sarah, I'll cuddle my kids more. I'll just, get in their faces more, walk outside, calling others for coffee to come in. It actually pushes me when I get back into a really healthy spot, propels me to go engage with the flesh and blood people that are around me now. So that's how I do my best to try to balance it and handle it.
Heather, you said something that said, it's not the boss of me, and so when you get to that point where you maybe recognize I'm letting this be the boss of me, it's actually dictating how I feel and how I act. What do you do when you realize that?
Yeah, I think for me, especially when we first moved overseas, first thing in the morning, because everybody else was living their life while I was asleep because we're in Asia. So first thing in the morning, I'd grab my phone and I'd get on there to see what had happened, what had transpired while I was sleeping. And most of the time, I would find myself just, scrolling and scroll, and I would completely lose track of time. And then I would walk away feeling, like you said, Jenny, like bitter or angry, or feeling like, well, this isn't fair. They got to do this, or, whatever, just not in a great place emotionally. And so I think that I started to realize just that every time I was getting on social media and spending an extended amount of time on there, that I didn't like how I felt afterwards. And I think that recognizing that helped me to realize, okay, I need to put some boundaries in place. And so for me, I do not have Facebook or Instagram on my home screen of my phone. So I have to make an extra effort. If I see that little red notification symbol, it drives me bananas. I feel like I have to open it right away and see what that notification is. And so putting things in place like that to where I don't see those notifications, I'm more intentional about when I get on there. And I feel like intentionality and engaging with social media is a huge part of it not being the boss of you. When it just becomes this thing that you do because you're bored, or, I feel like you can't hardly wait in line somewhere in a store without people pulling out their phones and checking social media. Anytime that we maybe don't have something going on right in front of us, it's so easy for us just to grab that out and check it. And I'm still guilty of doing that from time to time, but I feel like, it's in those moments where I don't know what else to do with the spare moment except for jumping on social media that I realize this is bossing me a little bit too much. And so maybe I need to take a break for the rest of the day. I need to put my phone in another room so that I'm not even looking at it. Or, as soon as I'm tempted to grab it, I just need to stop and pray and say, Lord, help me to pay attention, like you were saying, Jenny, to just what's in front of me right now. I don't want to be so quick to go to that that I miss out on what's happening right in front of me.
And that we fill every single moment of quiet with loud things in our brain, because we're missing out on the opportunity for the Lord in that still small moment to speak to us. And I can't imagine how many conversations we've missed because we don't have quiet in our brain anymore, because it's always filled with the screen. But so as we, dig into, I'm just thinking of topics that we really just need to address. Some of them being, how do you interact with locals in your social media? So I had a great friend who I was like, hey, I want to friend you on Facebook or Instagram so we can stay connected. We live in different parts of the country. And they're like, well, actually, I only use social media for nationals. I'm only friends with nationals. I feel like that's the way I want to connect with them, or how do you mix nationals and expats? Because the story that you're telling, in my mind, I was mostly communicating to people that were supporters or were from my passport culture. But then if you start mixing in actually your local friends, and the stories are about them sometimes, and how you want to bring life and hope and help to them, and they maybe don't feel like they need that. And so how do you do that? How do you balance who do you say yes to and what story you tell?
Wow. That's why and I don't even just let anyone join my email list. And even those who maybe, there could be, some of my friends here maybe listening to this live right now and be like, what are you trying to hide, But just because, yes, for supporters and for those who I know are praying for us and are connected with us in that way, I just keep any kind of needs and all that. I just keep it there because I don't want to, as much as possible, muddy the waters, and so I think that's a story that I'm bringing out there. It's just, being real, being authentic with who we are, as we're almost like, not to say ministering in Iceland, not like, but the focus, just living life, in Iceland, and all of that being involved within. So I definitely don't even think about the balance, but it is like, what story am I telling? Am I telling a story that, and I think in the States too, doing ministry, I think with the same way, are we viewing everybody around us that we're impacting this project, or just really just that connection and relationship that we just want to have? How am I presenting that? But that's the thing, though. Like, it is mine. I think it's very mixed because everybody and their mama and daddy and cousin, everybody seems to have a phone here in Iceland, and the thing is, most of the communication, which has been a little hard, comes through Messenger. Instagram Messenger minimally, but Facebook Messenger, meetings, birthday party invitations, information about things that we're putting on, programs, whatever. It's like the email. And so that is a little hard for me actually, because, and I turn off my notifications, because if not, I could be getting pings all night long, not just because it's coming from the States, but it's from here, because people are just sending stuff and it's coming through Messenger. And that's how actually communication has happened for my husband too. It's been a whole new thing for him, because he was barely on Facebook before, but all of the information when he was coaching basketball, when we lived up north, all of that came through Messenger, with people sending that information. So it's hard because it's like you say, okay, I'm not going to shop. I need to keep to my budget. So I'm not going to walk into Target. Like, I'm not even to go there for something. If I need to get maybe a box of pizza, let me go ahead and go to, Kroger. Because if I get to Target, I'm going to come out with a basket full of stuff. So it's so hard, because I'm like, okay, I'm putting this down for today. But this message has come in that's pertinent to something that I'm actually working on. And y'all got me in Target now. And now I'm scrolling. Now it's still my choice, but it's so tempting. So that's the hard part about that mixture, is that the most of the communication, and I'm not talking about just friendly stuff for coffees. That's great, but a lot of the communication of actually work-related, ministry-related things happens through social media. And so I'm like, oh, I can't cut you off necessarily when I want to, because I really may miss something that I'm supposed to have for what we're doing. So that's been a little bit difficult.
Heather, do you find your community in Asia tries to connect with you on Facebook? Is that a dilemma that you have to struggle with?
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely, social media is huge where we live in Southeast Asia, especially Facebook. Not so much Instagram, but for sure Facebook is a huge way for people to connect. I think initially, our situation is a little bit unique in that we're in a sensitive country. And so that kind of adds another dynamic as far as, the more local people that we add, the more risk we run in not necessarily us posting, but sometimes other people, commenting or saying things that we're like, please don't use that word on our social media. So that's something that we've had to be mindful of and kind of try and figure out. So I have all of our local friends on Facebook. You can put people into friend groups. And so there are sometimes that certain posts that I'd prefer for them not to see, just because of sensitivity. I hide it from that group of people. And then we have our secret Facebook page that I use more specifically for ministry. If there's some kind of information that we need to share, prayer requests or whatever, those don't go on my personal Facebook page. Those go exclusively in our secret Facebook page. I will say, I do think that having both local friends and, friends from our passport country following me on social media, in some ways, I think it has helped me to have a little bit more accountability to make sure that the story that I'm telling about my host country is true, and that it's good, and that it is, meant to uplift and, not to make them look less than. And so, not that I don't think that I was necessarily intending to do that in the past, but I do think that maybe some of the wording or even some of the pictures that I chose to use, they only, people in our passport country only see what we show them, right? They're not going to necessarily be experts on the places that we live. We a lot of times are their greatest resource for being educated about the global community. And so, how do I want to do that? Well, I want to honor our host country and host culture, and make sure that I'm showing things in a positive but also truthful light. And so I feel like having local friends follow me on Facebook has helped me to think a little bit more before I post, and just think, if they see this, how are they going to feel about what I'm saying about their country and their home? If somebody says something ugly or hateful, or, even just kind of down on America, I'm quick to be like, hey, wait a minute, that's my home. Why you don't get to talk about my home that way? And I know that they would feel the same. So I think it can be a really positive thing. and just helping us to kind of filter through some of the things that maybe we would have posted otherwise without really thinking about it, to think, okay, let me make sure that what I say is going to be something that the people that I live among here would be proud when they read it and would feel like I'm telling a truthful story about who they are and the culture that they're in.
That's a great insight. And actually, we had a great question pop up from Elise, who wondering, hey, using your social media to help supporters know about your work and know about your culture, and like you said, you might be the only window into it that they're ever going to see. What types of posts have you found are most helpful for that? Is it about your work? Is it about history, culture, letting them get to know it? Is it just snippets of your day? What have you found that they seem to most connect with?
I think one of the things that I found to be really interesting when we came back to the States for our first home assignment was I really thought people wanted to know like ministry stuff. And so I started sharing at a ladies' Bible study, and I was kind of, sharing some of the ministry stuff that we did, and I hadn't gotten too far into it before somebody raised their hand and said, "Do you have electricity? Do you have a refrigerator?" And I was like, oh my gosh, here I've been like stressing about trying to figure out the stories that would like, really impact them. And they just want to know if we have running water and a dryer. And so I think that realization took some of the pressure off of feeling like I need to constantly push stuff that's going to make people want to support us, and realizing that people just want to know like what our life is like. And so for me, I have found those to be the posts that people really enjoy, and I think interact with the most are just ones where I talk about my trip to the market that morning, or our trip driving down the mountain, or sitting at a table and having a meal and showing a picture, like I said, of the food that we eat and things like that. Just really showcasing the culture and the people with their permission, and showcasing, the beauty of the country that we live in. Of course, they do want to hear the stories and they want to know the ministry aspects, but I think they really genuinely are just interested in our lives. And so being able to kind of take some of the pressure off of feeling like it always has to be ministry focused, and realizing I can just show the little shop next door where I buy eggs, and people think that's super cool. And it's, it helps them to have a bigger box to be able to put those stories in when we do share them about ministry, because we're creating this framework of understanding for them.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
I think it's the same too. I think I'm thankful. I guess I haven't given sometimes people more credit. Is we're almost like where they're like, hey, we actually get to the condo and they want to hear, but we sent you guys, we're supporting you. Like, it's almost like we know what you guys do and we trust you to continue doing what it is that God's called you to do there. So can you show me a picture of the Northern Lights or whatever, basically, because that has been the most engagement, I think, if you look at it that way, where it has been the unique parts, the kind of funny parts of being in the culture. And I don't do enough of it, I don't think, which I think because I never wanted it to be like a, Iceland travel vlog either, because, it is so, so many people before COVID came, but it has been fun to see the comments or just the shock and awe at just some of the weird parts of the island. And so I think, and then for their context, they're like, wow, so you're doing all that with this, or your kids are walking through the school bus about to get knocked down by that wind, or you're in 5 feet of snow and everybody's still, operating. And so those dynamics, I think, like you said, it has given people a bigger box, I think, to put our life in, and to see kind of what we're doing in the midst of all that. So that has been, I think, the most with supporters. And like you said, Heather, the pressure hasn't been taken off because of, I don't have that private Facebook, but that email list of where those specific things are. So if they know they get that email, that's where I'm giving you the majority. Usually for me, it's just, I think, once every 2 months, actually, but I'm giving you the majority of our ministry updates, our prayer requests, all those things are there. So it kind of frees me to not feel so bad about the general population, because the general population is not supporting us like that way, or they're not necessarily joined with us or invested into us. So then I feel less pressure to I hope it's still hard, but to try to make, to put the story out there so that you feel like you should give to what we're doing, if that makes sense. So, yeah.
So because I have two moms on here, I want to get into a little bit about your kids and social media, and what are the ages of your kids, just if you don't mind sharing that.
My kids
Mine
are 13, 12, and 10.
Okay.
And mine are 3, 5, 7, and 9.
All right. So we kind of, range from 3-year-old to teenage years. And so I have found my youngest is 17 and my oldest is 23. And so how I have posted, where you're kind of documenting their lives, changes a little bit as they begin to grow and care about, Mom, that picture of me, you put that up there, and so there's this element of, you're telling their story, but then eventually they have their own story that they begin to tell and share in some ways. And then the whole other aspect of, are you engaged in the social media that your kids are engaged in, and how do you make sure that they're healthy and developing those good boundaries and understanding all of the things that you said you had to learn? Well, they are born into this dual culture and posting, and even a little bit, I remember, as a homeschool mom myself, when my kids are posting, I'm like, you spelled that wrong, I'm your teacher. You know what I mean? Everyone's going to think I'm a horrible teacher. And so, just a little bit about all of those. Would you have anything to speak into just about how you're engaging and helping your kids shape their own philosophy on social media and how to interact with that healthily? Heather, do you want to start us off on that?
Sure. Yeah, I think this is such a good and important conversation. I was actually talking with a friend earlier this week about it, and I was like, we're really the first generation having to raise our children with social media, as a part of their lives from a young age. It was not around until I was, well, we won't talk about that, but it wasn't around when I was younger. And so, our parents, weren't able to pass on the wisdom of how to, bring up a child in the social media world, because that wasn't a thing for them. So we're all having to kind of navigate this from scratch. And it's really intimidating, and it's scary. You hear all these horror stories, and it's really scary to think about kids being on social media, but also, especially with raising kids outside of their passport country, it can also be such a huge connector, just like we've been talking about with us as adults, keeping us connected to people. And I think especially this past year with COVID and so many things going online, and, our kids that were maybe already isolated becoming even more so. For us, for our family, we live in a pretty remote area in Southeast Asia. And so I had been, none of my kids had been on social media. And then when COVID hit last year, we kind of had to step back because our kids were just really struggling with the isolation. Now all of a sudden we're out in the middle of nowhere. And then even the little bit of interaction that they would get with friends in person was gone. And I actually sat and listened to a meeting with a counselor, and she was talking about how it really was important to keep our kids connected, even if the only way was social media or, something online to do that. And so actually just about a month ago, we let our oldest get on Instagram. So we are in just the very beginnings of what it's like to have a child on social media. And we have very clear boundaries with her. And one of the things that we've done that I feel like maybe growing up, my parents didn't always do this well, was we have really tried to bring our kids into the conversation about the boundaries that we're setting, and even letting them help establish those boundaries. And so when it comes to social media, screen time, whatever, we've talked with our kids and said, okay, this is kind of what we feel like is reasonable. What do you think about this? Do you think this is reasonable? If you don't, then what do you feel like is reasonable? And I think that especially teenagers, a huge piece for them is just feeling like their voice is valuable, feeling like you will listen to them and you'll hear them. And so, not that we're going to let them dictate all of those boundaries, but bringing them into the conversation and not just saying, this is the rule, abide by it, or all of this is gone. But it just being a continual conversation. And so we found that to be a good way as we kind of, step into the waters of social media, to that way, whenever we do find that there's an issue, or maybe she's spending too much time on there, we can say, hey, you were a part of coming up with this, or if she's asking for more time, you're the one that helped us decide on this. If you felt like this was a good boundary, then why do you feel like it needs to be changed now? So that's something that we've done that's been helpful. I think when it comes to, like, yes, I do follow her on social media for sure. And I definitely get some of those, things that she shares that you're like, oh, that spelling or grammar is not great. But, it's her opportunity to express herself, to be herself. And so I'm happy for her to have that. But I do think, and I've let my kids look at my social media long before they actually had social media. So they are allowed to, if they ask with permission, and I'm sitting there as well, if they want to look on my Facebook to see what I posted, or if they want to look on my Instagram to see what I posted, and knowing that they are seeing those things does help me as a mom to think, is the story that I'm telling kind of the same as we talked about with our local friends? Like, is the story that I'm telling about them something that they're going to be proud of, or that they're going to feel good about, that they're going to feel like is uplifting? And have our youngest son is adopted. And so even sharing his story, when he was younger, I think I shared a lot more openly about his story, that as he's gotten older, I've thought, is this something that he's going to be comfortable with? Like, it's his story, it's his life. Do I have the liberty to just share all of these things, or do I need to save that because it's his story and let him tell it at his time? So even maybe before you allow your kids on social media for themselves, it can be good before you post something to say, hey, I'm going to post this. Like, is this cool with you? Are you okay with me saying this? I've done that with my son. If I did want to share something about his adoption story, and letting him, sign off on that. So I think even trying to be ethical and careful in the way that we share our kids' stories will help them hopefully be more mindful and intentional in the way that they do that as they get older, because we're modeling that for them.
Very good. Jenny, what about younger kiddos? Are you beginning to shape those things now?
A little bit. I think first it goes even beyond the social media. It's just the media, the phone, especially because many of my kids' friends, as early as like 5 years old, they have phones with them. And we're probably the militant parents who are just like, what are you watching? You went outside to play, not to gather around the phone, So we're really, because there's just so much that could come through, to really teach my kids, like, and we'll say, like, you guys know what our standards is, what we don't watch or do watch. And so they're aware of that. And as my daughter gets older, especially, there is that struggle of comparison, because listen, she's begging for a phone like at 10 or 12. And I'm like, I don't know if you're gonna get one. You're 16, it's just so much. But anyway, so we're still wrestling with that a little bit on like what age she actually gets a phone. But the social media part, though, I've actually been even more like, okay, I love, we keep saying this, what story am I telling? And I had someone posted several months ago, just encouraging young moms really like use some discernment with what you share of your kids. And it's for her, she didn't share anything about her kids. But I took that, and even though I knew I'll still be sharing, and people love it, they want to see, and there's so many things, that the kids do that are just cute, amazing, super crazy and hilarious, that is just another great connection point, honestly, and that they're okay with that. But that whole story thing of, as they look back, this is the first time, not only are we raising kids who'll have access, but we're raising our families in this time where all this is documented almost publicly. And so even something small that I thought was funny, will this embarrass my child, later, or just even in a few months or so? So I've been trying to really weigh all that on what I post of them, and making sure that I'm being honoring of, we talk about that for the community that we're in, but also for our kids, honoring for them and of what we post. That is the hard part. And two, how much of their behavior do you want conditioned to performing for the camera? I mean, there's sometimes it's funny. Like my kids will like, okay, they'll take my camera, they'll do something, and then send us to Nana, because I have a family WhatsApp for my family in the States, and so we'll send pictures back and forth there. So they would do all that. But it is kind of just that dynamic, like how much this is a part of what we do, and they know I'm posting things sometimes even for work, as we call it, whether it's ministry. But if what we put out is centered around that, I don't want even their behavior conditioned to that, because we're trying not to be conditioned, to what we post. And so that is what, as they're forming and they're so young, like how much do I let this determine their response and their behavior, and how do I give them the strength to not only compare because their friends have what they do not, but also when they do start interacting and they do start scrolling through and seeing, to not let with us too, that see the bitterness or loss or whatever come in even on their age, when they're seeing the friends they interacted with at a birthday party because I'm friends with their mom. You know what I'm saying? So everything even that I'm dealing with personally and emotionally, it's like, I don't want them to deal with just from them looking over my shoulder at something that I'm scrolling through. And so that's been a difficult thing, but my husband and I are doing our best to, okay, how can we not let this phone be, around as much as we're interacting and doing things. But then if it is something fun or that we feel that's beneficial to share, like, hey, I'm doing this, I'm going to post this, like you said, are you guys good with this? Even at 5 years of age, even at the 3-year-old, well, he doesn't have a say, but I think about that too, because it's like, wow, I'm posting things actually without your consent. I hope you'll be okay with this. So it is that dynamic that I never thought I would think about before when I had social media, way before I had kids. So all those layers of the family, the ministry, whether it's business, encouragement, personal, all those layers come in, and it does make it this, again, this beautiful thing that we get to do, but could be distracting. And could be just a need for us to continue to put up boundaries and place it before the Lord too, because everything's permissible, right? But is this beneficial right now? And that's what I have to think of in there for them in the context of my kids.
I love, Heather, what you said, just, we are the first generation raising children with this in mind. And my kids are, I think, even a step above, even a little bit older. And what I have found is that even getting to walk with them through controversy that happens on social media, in the comments, and people, my daughter started a business during COVID that she sells ethical and sustainable goods because she just has a passion for that. And there's been a lot of people that have, loved that, but then also said some harsh things to her about it. And so getting to parent and walk through, how do you take criticism? How do you do that well? How do you protect your heart and keep asking the Lord, Emma, is what I'm doing good? Is this what you want me to do? And so it's this opportunity of shaping and growing them to be able to carry the weight of what they're going to be stepping into as adults in a social media world that we didn't have to prepare for. And it's just a whole different ball game. And, when you're doing that cross-culturally, it adds that other element. And I feel like this conversation could go in so many different directions. There's so many areas that we could really encourage each other in. I hope that it continues to be a conversation that we're having with each other as, A Life Overseas, as Taking Root, as Velvet Ashes, as there are these platforms where we can share this with each other. I hope that we continue to do that. And I just want to thank you ladies so much for this insightful, enlightening, encouraging conversation. I feel like there's so many little nuggets that we can take away about the story that we're telling. And I appreciate what you have given to this conversation today. So we do want to be mindful of time. Thank you for joining us online. If this was helpful to you and you want to share that with somebody, I feel like this is an encouraging conversation that will bless so many. So feel free to let people know that they can watch this recording through Velvet Ashes, through our Facebook page. There's going to be a link to it if you want to share this with somebody. So ladies, thank you so much for joining us today.